Welcome everyone to this evening's planning meeting. We only have one item on the agenda, the Newhurst Gardens application as S73. May I have apologies for absence, please?
I've had no apologies, Chairman.
Thank you, Emma. And do we have a note of everybody present? I think Pete Frew is missing, that's all.
Yeah, I believe so, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, looking at the minutes, please. I think we have a correction in the list of those present. The visiting members, Councillor Gore and Councillor Virgo, should have been only in the visiting councillors present list. By the way, welcome to our visiting councillors this evening, Councillor Virgo and Councillor Harrison. Thanks. Do we have any corrections other than that? Councillor Smith.
Yes, Chair. I also notice that Councillor Zahiruddin is not noted present, which is incorrect.
I'm sorry, Councillor. Can we please add Naz? Thank you. Any other? No. In that case, those TVs are doing funny things. Can we? Sorry. With those corrections, I move that the minutes for the last meeting are correct. All those in favour? Oh, I didn't have a seconder, please. Oh, Councillor Egglestone. Oh, can't hear. Oh, you pressed it twice. Oh, what's happened to that? Oh, is it me?
There was one before. Oh. Yeah. Just warming up now.
Can you make sure that you pressed your button so it's warming up, and then next time it will work, okay? Right. And Councillor Eggleston?
Happy to second the minutes.
Thank you very much. We'll get there. All those in favour, please. Thanks. Thank you. So, any declarations of interest? We have nobody declaring. Oh, the other person who's not here is Stephen. Who have we got online? I forgot to ask.
Not the...
We've...
Sorry.
Jamie, yeah.
Sorry, we've got Councillor Smith online.
Okay.
And he's also in the chamber. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see him on the camera.
Thanks a lot. That's brilliant. Okay. So, urgent items of business. No.
I received a notice saying that Councillor Barnard would like to make a statement.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you, Chair. So, following on from the last Planning Committee, just like to read this statement. At the last planning committee meeting, I let my passion and frustration get the better of me. On a number of occasions, I showed a lack of respect to you, the chair, and therefore the committee as a whole. I subsequently reviewed the recording of the meeting and reflected on my conduct at that meeting. I've also since participated alongside others in some follow-up training with regards to the conduct of planning committee. I consequently will ensure I follow due process in a courteous manner. In conclusion, therefore, I offer a full and unconditional public apology to the chair and members of the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Barnard, and it's graciously received. Thank you. Oh dear, we have issues this evening, I'm afraid. Yeah. Okay, now for the item that we will be looking at, land south of Forest, no, land north of Newhurst Gardens. The public speaking is being actioned. We have a speaker from the floor, Mr. Hobbs, I believe. And also, I believe it's the agent who's online. Now, what's the name of our agent?
Apologies, I haven't been given the name.
Oh, perhaps Jamie. Jamie, do you know the?
Yeah, it's Mr. Ed Barton.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm present.
Lovely. And can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you all well.
And we can hear you. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. So, may I invite, it's Mr. Hobbs first.
No,
No.
it's officer presentation first.
Oh,
And
sorry.
I just wonder if it's worth announcing to the public about the other item being deferred. Is this not actually?
Oh, okay, not
That
public
also-
knowledge. Okay, so the first item, item 5, has been deferred as we were not able to complete a site visit on Saturday, and that's the reason it's not on. So first of all, we have the officers' presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will just share my screen. Members will recall that this item was deferred from the June Planning Committee for officers to address questions raised by members at that meeting. This application was the subject of a site visit by members last Saturday. This application is made under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 and seeks to amend conditions attached to Planning Application 16/01004/OUT, which was approved at appeal. This approved the principle of up to 50 dwellings and details of the access point from Newhurst Gardens. Application 22/00244 was subsequently submitted and approved last year, which included the provision of open space, on-surface swales and sud features and 13 or 26% affordable housing units. The site has an extant permission and forms part of the Council's 5-year housing land supply. A Section 73 application enables conditions on an application to be amended or removed. One such use is to enable plans to be substituted where there is a need or desire to amend them. Another use is to provide details reserved by condition and in effect discharging that condition. A Section 73 application creates a new planning permission with the amended conditions which then sits alongside the original consent, and the developer can decide which application they implement. However, in considering Section 73 application, the decision maker, in this case the Planning Committee, must only consider the conditions which are being amended, not the principle of the application again. A Section 73 application cannot extend the timeframe under which a permission can be implemented, and it must copy over any conditions originally imposed unless previously discharged. So this application before committee tonight seeks to amend condition 4 of the application 16/01004 OUT, which listed the plans approved by the inspector. The applicant wants to amend the access details, and in doing so, agree details originally secured by condition 6 relating to visibility displays and 7 construction of the access. In determining the application, you, the committee, are respectively reminded that you can only consider these changes. So I'd like to draw your attention to the supplementary report. I can confirm that the red line of the site has not changed, as confirmed by the revised condition 4 or renumbered condition 3 on page 101 of the report pack. In addition, the supplementary includes confirmation that the applicant has agreed to clauses being inserted within the revised section 106 to secure details of the management and maintenance of all the proposed roads, including the access and control over visibility displays which fall outside the red line of the site. It is further noted that additional information has been submitted to councillors from residents. Members should be aware that not all of the points made in this are factually correct. For example, it is noted that this information claims that the internal roads are to be adopted whilst the access would not be. This is incorrect. At present, none of the roads, including the access, are to be adopted. In addition, the pack contains an email from the highway officer to the case officer, submitted as evidence that the highways officer is not happy with the scheme. It should be noted that this email predated the safety audit and the applicant response to that audit, and does not constitute the formal response of the Highway Authority on highway safety matters. I got a verbal change to make. So under condition 3, the access plan overview should be revision C, whilst the vehicle access scenarios plan should be revision B. So I'll just go through the presentation. So this is revision C, the access plan overview, which shows the detailed details of how the construction of the proposed access is going to work. So here is Newhurst Gardens. You've got the existing adopted part of Newhurst Gardens here. The access will carry on at the same width of Newhurst Gardens up to a point here, whereby it would narrow to go through past a TPO tree here and into the site. You will see that details of the signage, including the one-way proposal to the access, are included on the plans. So vehicles entering the site from the south from Newhurst Gardens would have priority over vehicles leaving the site. On the other side of the drawing, this shows the construction of the makeup of the highway access. So the area of the carriageway highlighted in grey with the crosses on it is to be permeable, i.e. allowing water to pass through it. The access strip for services would be non-permeable construction. The honeycombed area is the access where cell web would be installed within the footway to protect the root protection area of the tree subject to the TPO, which is located here. Cross sections are also provided, providing details of how the construction would take place. including the existing land level, so there'd be minimal incursion into the soil given its proximity to trees. And then we've got some site photos. There we go. Yep. So this is Newhurst Gardens looking north towards the new access, which members will be aware, the weather was slightly different on Saturday, I believe. Again, a bit further up Newhurst Gardens, this tree is subject to a TPO, and then the tree in the background there is the oak that's also TPO'd. Okay. So the access would extend into that area. And then that is the existing field access. You can see there is already some hard surfacing down that used to serve the site. And that is looking back from the access down towards Newhurst Gardens. This vegetation would be cleared as part of the proposals. This is one of the existing manhole covers. There's a Thames sewer that runs through the access and continues north through the whole site. So the main issues arising from the previous committee were the noise from the raised table through the narrowing, contents of the Section 106 agreement, especially concerning the adoption status of the roads and footpath within the estate and maintenance and management of those in the future. In addition, questions of land ownership and visibility displays have been raised within recent submissions from residents. So, turning first to the noise impact. The applicant submitted research which was undertaken at the former Transport Research Laboratory, the TRL site. This investigated the impact of different road humps on noise levels. The noise level was measured at a height of 1.2 metres above the track at a distance of 7.5 metres and 4.5 metres. Tests were conducted at a reference speed of 16 miles an hour over all surfaces and typical road speeds for each variation. The results showed that the noise decreased when compared with a level road over all variations of the road humps. Environmental health officers have been consulted and have no objection on noise grounds to the proposal. It is therefore considered that noise issues been considered and would not result in undue noise and disturbance to residents. So now turning to the content of the Section 106 agreement. So, as previously stated, the applicant is not putting forward the access or internal estate roads for adoption. The roads will be constructed to an adoptable standard, ensuring that they are of a safe and suitable construction. In addition, the applicant has agreed to include clauses to secure details of the future management and maintenance of the access road and internal roads once constructed within the revised Section 106. In addition, the recommendation secures a clause regarding the visibility displays which fall outside the application red line but within land the applicant has said they control. Whilst officers are aware that there is a land ownership dispute, land ownership is not a planning consideration. The inspector, in determining the 2016 appeal, noted that the owners of 5 and 6 Newhurst Gardens claim that the access may encroach upon their land, but this is a private legal matter which is not affected by this appeal decision in any way, and that is the case today. So, other points from the June committee. These included vehicles mounting the pavement, teenagers walking down the centre of the carriageway and pedestrians falling off the back edge of the footpath. Planning and design cannot eliminate all risks, neither legislate against the actions and decisions of individuals. In this instance, the committee has the benefit of a safety audit, which along with the developer's response has been considered and found acceptable by the highway officers. So in conclusion, this Section 73 application should only be assessed against the changes being proposed, i.e. the changes to the access, highway safety and impact upon trees. This is a site with an extant permission and forms part of the Council's 5-year housing land supply. The application has been scrutinised by officers and the applicant has had to put in additional information to ensure that the proposal meets the requirement of both the Highway Authority and the Tree Service. Whilst the proposal differs from that approved at appeal, the inspector considered the plans which were put in front of him at the time. There are no restrictions which state that the applicant cannot submit an alternative scheme. In fact, it's not uncommon for schemes to be amended through Section 73 applications once detailed drawings have been produced. It is for the committee to consider the same scheme on the facts of the case, the merits of the scheme, in accordance with the adopted local plan and national guidance. As there are no objections from the Highway Authority or Tree Service or Environmental Health, and as such the proposal is considered to comply with policies CS1, CS7 and CS23 of the Core Strategy DPD and policies EN1, EN20 of the Bracknell Forest local plan, and therefore it is before you recommended for approval in accordance with Section 6 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Fryer. Now I believe we take the speakers, public speakers, and
Yeah, they've got 3 minutes each, and we'll start with Mr. Hobbs.
Mr. Hobbs, please.
Would you
I've
like to
done this
take a seat up here?
Oh, okay. Is the microphone being prepared?
It's working now, yes.
Okay, I've set the timer.
Okay.
Hang on.
Oh, she's got.
Oh, you've got the timer. Okay. Would you like to tell Mr. Hobbs when he can begin? Please.
Councillors, this application is valid and should be refused. Officers will tell you that the matter of the application site boundary is a boundary dispute and a civil matter. This is not about a boundary dispute. It would not matter who owns the land. This is about officers allowing the applicant to ignore both government and council's own planning rules. They are using land outside of the application site boundary, the red line, because the application site boundary from the outline planning permission clearly does not include all the land necessary to carry out the proposed development, including the visibility displays. Next slide, please. This application does not comply with the government's or the council's validity advice, and it cannot just be altered retrospectively by the Section 106. This application should therefore be refused on these grounds alone. Next slide, please. If you need further reasons, the road safety visibility lines from number 5 are inadequate and unsafe. Even using the land outside the boundary, looking north, it is 18 metres to the near curb when it should be 25. Keeping within the application site boundary, the visibility line north would be just 11 metres, less than half the 25 metres required. And looking south into a 30-mile-per-hour road, the visibility line should be 43 metres, but is only 22.5. Next slide. As you saw, the sewer manholes fill the footway. When work happens on the sewers via the manholes, chaos will follow, as this, the only entrance road and footway, will be blocked, with not enough space for pedestrians and vehicles to move through safely. Emergency vehicles will not be able to access the site. Adoption. The access highway and therefore all the roads within the development site are not being adopted, all because the applicant is using CellWeb to construct the footway and the access, and Selweb is not approved for use under BFC standards, so is not to adoptable standards. When the officer states that the carriageway is being built to adoptable standards, it is just the carriageway, the road, not the footway. In fact, where are the changes to the Section 106 regarding maintenance? Nowhere, because nothing has been agreed. How can you approve the access on these terms? Drainage. Officers will tell you that the carriage is permeable, but less than a quarter of the narrowed access is actually permeable. In a heavy downpour, rainwater from the whole of the narrowed access will flow north and east towards the small part that is porous. There it will not soak through, it will run off and undermine the roots of the oak tree and the garage of number 6, causing damage to private property. Also, visibility lines at the junction of Newhurst Garden with Warfield Street are currently inadequate and well below the 60 and 62 metres required, and therefore unsafe. Next slide. The applicant already has approval to build this 2-lane carriageway, which would be far safer than trying to shoehorn in the unsafe, unsatisfactory and illegal design proposed today. The officers should have refused this invalid application. An invalid application cannot be validated at the last moment simply by extending the application land covered by retrospective alterations to the Section 106. Don't be railroaded by the officers. Reject this unsafe, invalid and illegal application and tell the applicant to build the access they already have approval for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Should we have questions?
Questions of clarification.
Questions of clarification? Would you mind staying for a moment? Do you have any questions, committee?
Sorry,
Councillor
Chair, can
Barnard.
we just pause for a moment because Councillor Mr Mackenzie Ball just needs to play a quick comfort break. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll
Because
do
I know
that.
that she has to be present for
Yeah.
all parts of the meeting. Apologies for this. Thank you.
That's tricky.
I think the next person is Councillor Barton that will be speaking.
Mr. Hobbs, please. No, Thank you. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is the agent, Mr. Egbarton. The applicant, I beg your pardon. Hello. So
I was nearly a councillor a second ago.
yes. Right. Emma, would you like to time Mr. Egbarton?
Yeah, of course.
I think we're ready when you are. Would you like to start?
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This Section 73 application addresses detailed technical matters and addresses conditions attached to the outline planning consent. Following the previous committee meeting, we have worked alongside officers, we have provided additional clarification and engaged with independent and professional consultants to address concerns raised at the previous planning committee. As a result of this work, our application has officers' approval. Through this process, we have arrived at a highway solution which is commonly adopted to address these types of constraints. Thank you for listening.
Short and sweet. Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Clarification of what Mr. Egbarton said. No? Are you? No. Okay. I think we have no questions of clarification. So, time for questions.
Yeah, questions for officers.
Questions for our officer, Officer Fryer. Who would like to start with questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. My questions were in relation to paragraphs 4.23, 4.24 of the officer's report, which address queries that were raised about the surface water runoff and the slopes at the edge of the new access road and pavements.
Excuse me, could you tell us which page, please?
It's on page 97 of the
Thank
report,
you.
sorry. I just wanted to seek the officer's clarification with regards to our assessment of surface water runoff and how that will affect the neighbouring properties, and perhaps if you could just confirm, is there anything from a policy standpoint we should be aware of with regards to what would normally be acceptable in terms of water runoff onto adjacent properties? Thank you.
Mrs. Fryer. Sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. As you can see from this plan, the access from this point here down to where it joins Newhurst Gardens, apart from the small access strip, is of permeable construction. So water landing within the highway will drain through and will not therefore run off onto land. Now, taking into account the footpath that runs along this side of the carriageway, as you can see from the section drawings, this is the highway and this is the footpath. So the footpath falls down onto the highway, so water will not run off from the footpath onto the any adjoining land. So therefore, we are talking about a very narrow vegetated strip along the sides of the access, or a wider vegetated strip in this on this side, which, if we go back to the sections, does fall towards neighbouring properties. However, having clarified this with our drainage engineer, who our lead local flood authority, as part of her role as the lead local flood authority, she is not concerned that it is a sufficient area for sufficient amounts of water to run off into neighbouring land. I hope that answers that question.
Councillor Smith, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a supplementary, I'd just like to ask the officer, and I fully appreciate what's been explained there with regards to the runoff from the pavement. the current lie of the land is such that, you know, potentially water falling on that property may drain currently in that same direction towards where the road is currently. Would the sort of raised lip on the edge of the pavement there therefore create a problem where that water potentially risks becoming trapped and could increase the risk of flooding in that area, or are we satisfied there are no concerns there?
Mrs. Fryer.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So let me get, I've understood the question right. So you're saying that water currently from the neighbouring property falls towards the application site? Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, that it was a question as it struck me. We visited the site on Saturday and saw it, and it felt to me like that may be the direction in which surface water could travel. So I was just concerned as to whether we are potentially trapping surface water there, which could exacerbate issues on that property.
Officer.
Through you, Chair, I'm not aware that's specifically been raised before and looked into. I mean, this is a garage. It has some hard surfacing, which will obviously have its existing drainage. The rest of it, I understand, is permeable surface and green space, so water should permeate through, and it will be a greenfield site, and water will be absorbed into the soil, as far as I am aware. I am not aware that this site or this area has suffered from surface water flooding, which is a layer that we consider and look at. So it's not been highlighted, surface water has not been highlighted as a problem within this area that would be a concern in approving this application.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you, question for the officers. I've got a couple. The first is about the cell web. So, it's context. If I got this right, the area with the cell web will not be adopted. But there's a design life that has 40 years. Now, if I look at paragraph 4.29 on page 101, if it's not adopted, how can we be certain, once that sort of, 30, 40 years beyond, because these houses are going to last a lot longer than that. I mean, Whitegrove's, 30 odd years old now. How can we be confident that the integrity of this design is going to maintain, notwithstanding some of the questions that have been raised about drainage earlier? Because my understanding is that if that's, porous surface gets more and more clogged with silt and detritus over the years, it doesn't function as well in terms of coping with the water, and over time it's a little more marginal when it comes to supporting the oak tree. But just interested on your views on that. Thank you. And then I have one other question, Chair, after that. Thank you.
Officer.
Through you, Chair,
Yeah.
Andy Wells, Highways. I'll answer the part of the question relating to adoption, if that's okay, and then Ms Fryer will respond on the maintenance point. The footway area, which is shown with the sort of honeycomb shape on the orange coloration on the plan, is the area where cell web is proposed. It is not proposed in any other area of the access. The cell web construction is not proposed to be adopted, as is none of this access arrangement nor the on-site layout. However, it is required to be two adoptable standards, and Bracknell Forest Council's adoptable standards allow cell web construction within footway areas, and we have areas within the borough which are adopted and have cell web construction within footway areas. The carriageway is not a cell web construction, and we don't have cell web adoptable standards within the authority. Hopefully that answers that part of the question, and then Ms Fryer can respond regarding the maintenance.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, yeah, through you, Chair. Just to add to what Andy said regarding the cell web, it is not the inclusion of cell web within this application. That is not the reason why the roads are not being adopted. I'd just like to clarify that. In terms of the management and maintenance, my understanding is that permeable surfaces do require additional maintenance to make sure that the gaps within the structure of the tarmac are maintained, which allows the water to permeate through them, which is why the maintenance and management of this site is now a clause in the 106 at the agreement of the applicant. So we can, as an authority, we can control and make sure that the management and maintenance of that, the site and of the proposal will be of suitable to enable the permeable surface to continue and act as it should be, and therefore it should drain properly, and the life of, hopefully the health of the oak tree will not be compromised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard.
Just ask a follow-up on that. So how can we enforce that 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line? Because we're talking here about, you know, a significant development with a long lifetime on it, and, you know, the rationale behind this is as one way of accessing the site. So how can we maintain it in the long term? Because a lot can change in that time. I mean, you know, does the 106 seek that money's transferred to us to do it? I mean, how are we going to maintain and manage that?
Through you, Chair.
Chair, through you, would you like me to respond
Yes,
to that?
please do. Thank you.
The management and maintenance covenants in Section 106 agreement deal with management and maintenance in perpetuity. So those management obligations will be in perpetuity. It won't be for a 40-year period or whatever the lifespan is. They have to manage and maintain that site in perpetuity, and that's what the Section 106 obligations usually refer to.
Thank you.
If the roads aren't adopted, they need to be managed forever, basically.
So that would follow that would fall to the householders through some arrangement?
No, not the householders. It's the management company that is set up.
Okay, thank you.
By the developer. Yes.
Right, okay. May I ask my second question? Thank you. So my second question relates to paragraphs 4.3 to 4.6. That's on noise on page 96. I get the sort of noise levels. The question I have, through you, Chair, for the officer, is that when you have a raised table, even at slow speeds, and I know this firsthand because I've got one outside my house, you hear a distinct sound, particularly in quieter times when, you know, vehicles enter and exit the raised table. Has that been assessed in the context of the location, the proximity of properties, and the impact that will have on the existing residents at that sort of pinch point narrowing where we're talking about?
Thank you. Highways officer, or is it?
I can answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I think the raised table in this instance is a little bit different to the one outside of the councillor's house, in that the one that the councillor refers to has the granite sets that contribute to an increase in noise, and this one does not have any change in material when the cars go up and then back down the slope. In relation to the question that has it been assessed in terms of the impact on the houses? No, you know, it's clear in the information that has been submitted at what distances those noise readings were undertaken at, and I said it in my report, didn't I? So at 7.5 metres and 4.5 metres back, which I think is equivalent to the dwellings in this instance, and the noise readings are comparable with what is normal speech. So what we are discussing, you know, if we were talking here, that is what the noise levels are. The environmental health officer has assessed it and considered that there'd be no undue detrimental impact on the residents through noise from the raised table based on the evidence submitted, and has not asked for any further evidence to be submitted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a point. Yeah, just a point of information. The raised table outside my house is actually tarmac. There is a very, very small amount of granite curbing across, but the sound actually comes from when people start actually going up it and over it and down the other side. So the noise doesn't correspond with tyres over granite. But that's just, you know, for clarification. But I thank you for your... So it is actually the same material from start to finish, effectively.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Through you, Chair. I'm familiar with planning applications having a red site boundary. This planning application plan has two boundaries, a planning boundary which is marked in a black dashed line and an extent of land ownership boundary which is marked in red. What are these and why is it different to other applications I have seen?
Thank you.
Chair, would you like me to
yes,
respond to
please.
that? Chair, through you. This is a Section 73 application, and it is the rules in terms of what plans need to be submitted when submitting a Section 73 application are governed by the Development Management Procedure Order, and that says that when you are dealing with a Section 73 application, you do not need to submit a red line plan, and that is the case with this application. The original application has a red line plan, the Section 73 one does not, as it is not required under the Development Management Order procedure.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Collins?
I do. Do either of those lines equate to the site boundary, or are they different?
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to pick that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer.
The applicant has shown the black dotted line as equating to the red line plan, red line site plan that is submitted under the outline application and is carried forward onto this Section 73 application. And then the red line on this plan, as the key states, donates the extent of the land the applicant says it controls. So it's clear on the key what the lines on this plan relate to. It does not override the site location plan of the outline application. So the red line plan for planning purposes stays as the site location plan shows it.
Do you have another?
Thank you. I was going to follow up with that. Is that legal? But I think that has been explained. Thank you.
Further questions, committee? I'll come to you in a bit. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, if I could follow on from there. So it's a simpler thing to do, or through yourself to legal or wherever. So it's a similar form of application. If you had to do a 73, then what it is to put a full planning application in again? Stating the 73 application, why didn't the agent place it through a planning application? Is it to simplify things or to alter things where it's easier to change? Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Chair, through you.
Yes,
I don't know what the applicant's thoughts were when they were submitting the application, but under the legal procedure for submitting Section 73 applications, the Development Management Order is clear. You don't need to submit a red line plan.
Councillor Collins.
through you, Chair, why has the case officer considered the land registry site plan, and I haven't got a page, if land ownership is a civil matter?
I didn't catch the beginning of that. Could you make
Sorry.
your microphone closer, please? Thank
Sorry.
you.
Why has the case officer considered the land registry title plan in the report if disputed land ownership is a civil matter?
Thank
Through
you.
you, Chair, if I can answer. Land ownership is, as you say, is rightly, it's not a planning consideration. However, we do have to make sure that there is reasonable grounds that the applicant is not pulling the wool over our eyes, if that makes sense. So the land registry plan is not the defining factor. If you want to establish a boundary, my understanding is that it is a civil procedure and done by a land surveyor who will go out and adjudicate. In this case, the land registry plan was considered to make sure it was broadly in accordance with the information that was being submitted as a form of, if you like, checking, but it would not be the determining factor in considering the application.
Thank you. Do we have any further comment from the Borough Solicitor? No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Barnard.
So just following on from that, and for clarity, if, and it's a big if, subject, to balance things, it transpired that the applicant didn't own the land, presumably that then just puts a block on anything happening until that's understood, because they need the land to do this. And so that's the first bit. The second thing is, the second part of that to explore is, but that would then impact significantly on the sustainability of what we're agreeing tonight, but it couldn't happen if they didn't own that land. You know what I mean? I'm trying to understand about the sort of the sequence of events, because in my simple mind, I'd expect you actually own something you want to build on, but I know that doesn't actually always go that way, Chair, and I know that. So I think it's important for people here tonight to understand this, because it's a very key point, I think.
Thank you. Assistant Director, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you. The situation is that, as has been said a number of times, it's not for the council to adjudicate on land ownership matters. Yes, the registry was referred to simply to as a fail-safe kind of thing, but as the officer has said, that is not part of the decision. Part of the decision making tonight. The situation is that if it turns out that they require land not in their control to complete the application, to fulfil and develop out the application, the permission, as it would be, then it is unimplementable from their perspective until they have resolved that matter or come up with a revised scheme that they can do within the land that they control. But that is the situation.
That does then prompt a question.
Yep.
Because we're getting ever more constrained on the options to actually access this site, does our decision tonight impact on that process if they can't build it out? You know what I mean? Because I know in the past when we've given sort of permission, it's sort of given us said, well, you said it's okay. So how does that work in this context? Because I'm, through you, Chair, I'm not familiar with this sort of situation on a key application before. Sorry.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I mean, we have to basically take on faith what we are told by the applicant through the relevant declaration that they've made on the planning application, and we cannot do anything else. We are not a land tribunal, so we have to take that at face value, and if it subsequently transpires that that isn't correct, then that's an issue between the respective landowners, and if they need to come back to us for a revised permission, then we would deal with that at the time.
Thank you. Any further questions from members?
Sorry, Mr. Hobbs, do you mind if I just ask you a question?
No,
we can't.
I'm sorry, we are
Oh,
not
sorry,
allowed
I
to
do
that.
apologise.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Any further questions? Councillor Collins.
Sorry, could I just have confirmation that it is normal to consider put together the S106 agreement once planning permission has been granted by the committee, and that is why we're not considering the contents apart from in very broad terms?
Good question, thank you.
Chair, through you, the recommendation before you is to grant permission subject to a Section 106 agreement. So the permission isn't granted once you vote today. The permission is granted once the Section 106 has been completed. So that is standard procedure. The Section 106 negotiations can take some time to resolve and draft and complete. It is only once that Section 106 is completed to the satisfaction of the council that the planning permission would be granted. It's granted after the completion of the Section 106 agreement.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Just following on from that, the adoption of the roads is a big concern. Has the applicant been approached about adopting the road, or are we definitely continuing down the management route now?
Highways Officer, thank you.
Through you, Chair. Andy Wells, Highways. The Section 106 agreement to the granted outline permission sets out that the roads on the application site are to be to adoptable standards on land over which the applicant has control, but not to be adopted. The adoption process is that the site applicant offers the land for adoption, and normally that is secured within a Section 106 agreement.
I'm sorry, this is a public meeting, but this is a meeting in public, but not a public meeting, so please don't try to interrupt. It will just make things worse. Thank you. Please carry
Sorry,
on.
I've lost my
Thank
train
you.
of thought. Give me a moment.
Right.
The applicant has not offered the land for adoption. It is not offered for adoption under the Section 106 agreement as it stands. And the council cannot force an applicant to have highway adopted if it is not in an agreed Section 106 legal agreement. So the mechanism that is set out in what the applicant has agreed is a standard set of words with regards to the maintenance of the to remain unadopted sections of road, both within the axis in front of you on the screen and also within the development as a whole, to ensure that is maintained in perpetuity.
Thank you.
Chair, if through
yeah.
you I can add to that,
Yeah.
there is an obligation in the Section 106 which was completed in respect of the outline permission, and that requires the entering into highways agreements. That is another vehicle by which the applicant can offer the roads to be adopted. So they don't have to make the decision now. They can wait until those highways agreements are completed and offer the road up for adoption then.
Further questions? Okay, I'll take visiting councillors' questions now. So, Councillor Harrison first, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. What is the reason that roads won't be adopted, that it's not even being kind of required?
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to answer that. Unfortunately, we don't have any policy to require the developer to put the roads forward for adoption. So if a developer refuses to put roads forward for adoption, there is nothing the council can do unless it's secured in by a 106. In this case, the 106 to the outline did not secure any of the roads for adoption. It only secured that they be constructed to an adoptable standard. So that is why we cannot insist on the roads being adopted in this instance. There are other instances where developments of this size, the estate roads have not been adopted, and I believe one is in Crowthorne, known as the Cricketfield Grove site. So it's not ideal, but it's not uncommon and it's not unheard of, and it's not certainly a reason for refusing the application just because the roads won't be adopted.
Thank you. Further question or follow up, Councillor
Thank you.
Harrison?
And a follow up. In the case of the roads not being adopted, then will there be a legal agreement, and will, in the sense that the new residents will actually be stuck with the management charges? Because I know that can cause a lot of misery. There are lots of campaigns going on at the moment about people getting stuck with management charges when they're already paying council tax. And what happens? Does it stay with the, if that's not the case, does it stay with the developer? And what would happen in the circumstance where the development vehicle is collapsed by the owner?
Chair, through you, I can respond to that. Yes, the Section 106 will deal with the management and maintenance of any private roads. That is usually through a management company. Anybody who purchases the new properties will have that disclosed to them, and it's their choice then whether they decide to purchase that. The management and maintenance clauses or obligations that we have in the Section 106 agreements ensure that we get to approve some of those details, and the fact that the management and maintenance is carried out in perpetuity. There will be clauses that deal with any collapse of any private management companies and what happens in those circumstances. So that's standard Section 106 clauses that deal with management and maintenance.
Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Chair, very much. Can I just follow up on Councillor Harrison's point? Let me give you just a scenario, a question, but I won't go on too long. But if, for instance, there's a major problem with the entrance and it needs digging up and it needs to be repaired, and the management company collapses, what happens? Because obviously the road needs to be repaired and there'll be no one to pay for that, and the council won't do it because it's not adopted. So does it mean that the housing estate just has to suffer it?
That's a hypothetical situation, and the Section 106 obligations will deal with any collapse of management company, whether a situation can occur where there's a defect in the road at the exact same time the management company collapses. I can't answer that, whether that situation arises, but there is provisions to deal with any collapse in management companies, and usually that's known well in advance, and procedures are put in place to deal with any collapse. It's not something that happens overnight and then you can't deal with it. It's known beforehand whether a management company is about to collapse.
Could I ask a further question, Madam Chairman? Can we go back to the cell web? And ask the transport manager through you. I noticed on the notes, actually, that there are no restrictions on weight. And I would be concerned that lorries these days can go up to 40 tonnes, can't they? That's what's been approved by the Minister of Transport. And where lorries get bigger and bigger and they need to go on the pavement, does that, I mean, are we perfectly happy that that cell web can take that weight? Please.
Through you, Chair.
Yep.
Andy Wells Highways. The carriageway construction, where large and heavy vehicles are intended to be present for the vast majority of the time, is not to a cell web construction. It is only the footway that is of cell web construction in this instance. The carriageway width is 3.7 metres, which is more than sufficient for large heavy vehicles, refuse collection, fire tender, etc., to traverse that section without any overrun of that footway area.
Could I just have a supplementary? The point I'm trying to make, Madam Chairman, is that all things are great on a plan, but when it comes to real life, it's never quite like that. And so and I've seen it in this borough, all over this borough, where lorries have gone onto pavements all the time. And I just wanted to understand to the members that at the moment, that construction in the cell web construction will not take huge lorries. That's all I wanted to ask, really.
Can you confirm?
The construction of that cell web is designed to facilitate the movements that are set out in the design. There is a supplementary drawing which shows, in the rare event that the maintenance strip needs to be worked on, occasional vehicles overrunning that surface, and the consultant on behalf of the applicant has set out how that surface would be used and its ability to accept those movements in the rare occasion that may be necessary. But in normal situation, in normal operation, those vehicles will stay well within the carriageway area. There are a number of narrowings in the borough already through which large heavy vehicles traverse, and which are narrower than this narrowing that is proposed here. So, and those are predominantly on adopted sections of road. So there is no concern that the width of that carriageway is insufficient for day-to-day use by large vehicles.
Thank you. Do you have any comments? I'm taking the unusual step of coming back to the members of the committee for further questions, because I think everything needs airing properly. So, Councillor Barnard, would you like to?
It just follows on from that. If I remember from the cross-section, just to be clear to everyone, there is nothing, can you confirm that there is nothing stopping vehicles mounting? Yes, look, because it's flat. There's no sort of barrier between the carriageway and that. So, it's that's true, isn't it? So there's nothing that would sort of, like we had on some of the footpaths and pavements, we had sort of obstructions that kind of made it harder, but no, there's nothing there. Thank you. No, I've answered my own question. Sorry. Thanks.
Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. May I ask, therefore, sir, how wide, at the narrowest point, is this access?
Officer.
And Wells Highways, through you, Chair. The carriageway width is narrowed to 3.7 metres.
And the officer's already stated it's wide enough for the heavy vehicles. Do you have a supplementary? No? I think I will just check. Could you please elucidate a bit on where the sewers run and how that would be dealt with if something collapsed? Because that is of significant concern, I think.
Through you, Chair. I'll just bring up this plan which shows the line of the sewers through the entrance. So there is this red sewer which terminates here, feeds in horizontally on the plan from east and west, and then traverses north. And then there's the blue one that follows the line of the footway and joins the carriageway at the point where the access starts to widen. These are existing sewers, Thames Water sewers, and if they need maintenance, it will require the footpath possibly to be dug up. I do know that there are, digging up will be the last resort for Thames Water because it is the most costly. If possible, they will approach the sewer pipe remotely, possibly using the manholes. And there are more modern techniques, more remote techniques that can be used to either repair from the inside out, if you like, and put in lining in. So again, we're talking about hypothetical situations which might or might not happen. And we can't plan for every eventuality. We put in place the best that we can do. They are off to the side. If they did have to dig up, as the highway officer has already said, the carriageway is wide enough to allow vehicles past there at that point.
If I may follow up. What happens with Selweb if it has to be? Is that going to be Selweb there where the sewer runs through?
Through you, Chair, yes, where the footpath is proposed within the RPA of the tree, Selweb is proposed, and that will be something that the management company will have to consider, that if it is dug up, it will have to be reinstalled and put down in accordance with the manufacturer's details. So yes, that might need a little bit more of an excavation or a bigger area to do that, depending on what the manufacturer's details are. I know that, having spoken to colleagues in the tree department, manufacturers are becoming aware that it does cause a problem for maintenance issues going through Selweb, and they are looking to address that with technology coming forward in the future.
Thank you. That's engendered a few more questions. I think we better do this. Councillor Barnard.
How possible is it to try and ensure, should such repairs or maintenance work take place, that the reinstatement doesn't compromise the tree, it's done properly? Because I think we can all go around the borough, and I'm not going to mention my name, another contractor that's been working, but reinstatement is often a really, really subjective issue. And can we, what can we do to ensure that this is treated, as the ultimate sensitive spot for this? Because it's key, isn't it, to actually the long-term preservation of this? I mean, how can we? Because
thank you. Yeah, I think that's the question. Yep.
Through you, Chair. Yep. Because it's a protected tree, they would require permission to carry out works within the RPA, and that would include a requirement to provide the correct reinstatement.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from the points made with regards to access to the sewer, and particularly the scenario in which that may need to be excavated, paragraph 4.22 of the report, which is on page 97, contains a response from the applicant, which discusses a single lane closure access plan in that scenario that would still allow access through. But I'm interested also in what happens to the pavement in the foot access in that scenario, and do we still have sufficient width of the carriageway, presuming that a contractor would also have to create a pedestrian route to get through there as well in that scenario.
Officer, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair, and my colleague Andy Wells might want to come in at some point. You can see by the plan in front of you that there's no provision for footpath and pedestrians whilst the services are being, but all vehicles would be prevented from going through there apart from emergency vehicles if an emergency occurred whilst maintenance was being done to that service strip in the unlikely event of something happening within the site. Therefore, pedestrians would have a clear footpath. The majority of the time work was being undertaken. It is not that whilst the services are being excavated and repaired, that all vehicles in and to and out of the site would be permitted. The idea is that no vehicles would be allowed into the site during this time, except in the event of an emergency. And I would hope that emergency services vehicles would take care of pedestrians in that time, and pedestrians likewise would also be aware of blue flashing lights coming up, you know, if they're walking through that point at that specific time. But as the solicitor said, this is all hypothetical and very much based on what ifs and a very unlikely situation.
Thank you.
Would you like me to
Yes,
follow up on that,
please, yeah.
Chair? Through you, Chair. As Sarah has mentioned, it is a very unlikely situation that this may occur. It is a hypothetical situation. There are many examples across the borough where, if an emergency repair is required, that pedestrians have to share the carriageway space with vehicles, and that is managed by the contractors undertaking the works. They may put up temporary traffic lights to hold vehicles outside of that narrowing whilst pedestrians walk through. There are multiple options in terms of traffic management works that might be used. It all depends on if and where that problem occurs, how long it may take to fix, and how the best mechanism to manage that in that particular location is. It's not uncommon to have traffic management which needs to consider pedestrians and vehicles sharing the same space.
Thank you. Further questions? I think we're... Oh, Councillor Karim.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And through you, we seem to live in a world where we have excessive potholes due to either weather or maybe inappropriate materials being used on roads. Is there any information on how long the road surface would last and how often repairs in the normal course would be required?
Through you, Chair, the road's not to be adopted, but it is to be to adoptable standards, and the management company through the 106 agreement will be responsible for maintaining and managing that construction going forward in the same way that the Highway Authority is responsible for an adopted highway. So as an adoptable standard carriageway construction, the design life would likely be similar to a similar road, serving a similar number of properties, in this case circa 50 units.
Thank you very much. Councillor Collins.
While we're talking about safety, there is part of the S106 agreement was to include a tactile crossing across Warfield Street, and that plan was included in this planning application. There are concerns about safety there. It is in very close proximity to a bus stop, and the footpath on the southern side of Warfield Street is very narrow due to telegraph poles. I would have a question as to whether mobility scooters or pushchairs would be able to travel safely along that footpath. Is there anything we can do to look at that? Any further sort of approval before that is implemented?
Through you, Chair.
Yep.
The proposed tactile crossing on Warfield Street is part of the extant planning permission. the quantum of development and that proposal are unchanged, and therefore it is included in a similar manner with this application. The junction is existing, the footways are existing widths. It is the situation that is present on site. Nevertheless, there is a subsequent approval process needed, which is a Section 278 highway agreement to undertake any works on the adopted highway, and that will require a safety audit of those proposals to be undertaken.
So is it possible through that method to recognise the dangers of the existing proposed arrangement? And
it may be possible through the Section 278 agreement to make amendments to that plan that is shown, but it will obviously be subject to the highway approval process and a stage 2 safety audit.
Thank you. Further questions? Anything? I'm hoping we've covered all the concerns here. There were answers clearly in the agenda and the officer's presentation and report. I think we've covered every angle as far as I can make out. So it falls to me to propose the recommendation. I got it. The recommendation, is it page 100? And yeah. Recommendation, page 100.
As amended by the supplementary, page 1.
Thank you. Yes, as amended by the supplementary on page 1. There was only one. For approval. And can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you. Yep. Recorded vote. Okay.
I can go through the names, Councillor, Chairman.
We need to have some debate.
Yeah, we debate first, yeah. And visiting members first. So our debate starts here. Would you like to begin, visiting members, please? Yep.
Thank you, Judge. I start. Members, I'm not convinced that this is a good access plan to this site. I think it's got some severe problems with it. I'm concerned about primarily about the road safety, about the creation of an extended platform, extended raised platform, which is far larger than, for example, the one in Moorshead Drive in Binfield. I went and took some pictures. I was going to ask you maybe to put it up there, but I don't think it's necessary. I think members will have seen the pictures sent round by objectors. It will cause conflict between drivers who may be impatient to get through a narrow, restricted area. I'm also concerned about the potential damage to the protected tree, because it's fine to see it on a plan, but in real life we all know that when large vehicles are trying to negotiate around our housing estates, they often do mount the pavement and they do go up on that. This will be exacerbated by the extremely narrow nature of this carriageway, the fact that there isn't a proper curb, and I don't feel that in that circumstance with very heavy vehicles that even though Selweb may be good for having a single car on it, that heavy vehicles have much heavier axes now, and they will quite potentially endanger the protected tree. So I think it's been a brilliant debate, a brilliant set of questions. I think we've really dug into it, so I won't go on and on about this because I think people are familiar with the facts. And we have a planning committee of elected members because members can exercise their own judgment, exercise some common sense and put local knowledge into these proceedings. And I trust that local members will do that.
Thank you. Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not going to go on either because Councillor Harrison has said a lot here, but I'd just like to remind members, because I think this is a really crucial fact. When this was before the committee originally, the committee under a different regime, of course, but they refused it and it went to appeal. And the inspector passed the appeal, but the appeal was on the fact, on the plan, that there was a double track road. Now, ladies members, I put it to you, all the questions tonight have really been about the entrance. That's what we're looking at. If there were 6 houses in this application, I don't think we'd be so concerned. But there are not 6 houses, members. There are 50 houses. And that will mean 50 houses times 3 cars and so on, and lorries coming in and out. I am not convinced. We say, I think I've heard hypothetical. Well, I have to tell you, if you watch the news, hypothetical seems to happen in every news night, actually. So these things do happen. And if we must look as a committee, and I feel strongly about this as a member, for every possible problem that could happen before we commit. And I think there are so many problems with this. My fellow councillor here has mentioned the cell web. I've done a bit of research on cell web, actually, and from builders, and I understand the cell web is not great. Many people won't use it, and what happens over time, it gets cockily and it goes up and down. So you can imagine the chaos if that happened. I would just ask members to think very carefully, and I understand the problems that you will face because of going to appeal, but you know, there are sometimes when you have to stick up for the residents in this borough and look after their interests. And I think at the moment, certainly as a member, I'm not on the committee, but as a member, I am not, I could not vote for this. It's in your hands, I understand that, and I leave it with you. You have the right to say yes or no. But thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for the chance to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Virgo. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Madam Chair, I've heard the to's and fro's this evening. I cannot support this application. Frankly, Madam Chair, I cannot see why we're sitting here contemplating a Section 73 application on a development which should never have got to this stage. As a member of the Joint Community Board for the Leaders Climate Change Emergency Initiative, as a representative of the Parish and Towns Working Group, I'm affronted by the loss of biodiversity that this application will initiate in the parish of Warfield. I'm affronted by this non-sustainable development, Chair. No transport, no shops, therefore encouraging more car movements which will not contribute to reduction of carbon emissions. It is an island with no sustainable locational principles and contrary, therefore, to Save Policies EN20, EN25 of the BFLP relating to residential amenities. How can we uphold the fundamental principles of our climate change emergency strategy when 50 residential units were passed in the first place? Are we working, Madam Chair, as a team? This application further causes me concerns as we have had the risk to residents with regard to footpaths and the access and road safety. Hypothetical to me is the conditional word. It means a risk somewhere. Therefore, Madam Chair, I'm not convinced and therefore, with all due respect, cannot support this Section 73 application for all the faults I have just outlined.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. This is another quite difficult, quite emotionally weighted application before the committee with regards to the impact on local residents. I do fundamentally feel that this is quite a poor, quite a flawed means of access to the site, albeit probably the only potentially constructible means of access to the site. And, you know, I do not feel that this is a good way of going about development and creating access to sites like this. And for that reason, I've spent most of this debate and the questions really looking and trying to identify, is there a valid basis on the basis of our published planning policies, both national and local planning policies, to refuse it? I'm frustrated that there isn't. We've heard the answers from the officers who have spoken quite eloquently and defended their recommendation. It's the role of this committee, and I spoke about this last time as well. I think it's important we all remember this is a quasi-judicial committee. We do not have freedom as members on this committee to vote necessarily with our own subjective opinions on these matters. Our role is fundamentally to determine the question of, is this or is this not compliant with planning policy? Unfortunately, in this case, I feel that it is, and therefore I feel that, unfortunately, I am obliged to vote in favour of it. What I will say to residents is that I think what we have here fundamentally is a failure of policy. It seems absurd to me that an access arrangement like this is compliant with our policies, and I think that is something that we should do something. We can't turn it down. We can't turn it down. If we do, it will get overturned on appeal.
I'm sorry, we can't.
Okay,
have a
sorry,
conversation
we
with
can't
the public
engage in that.
gallery.
But
We'll have to ask you to leave if that continues. I'm sorry.
No, I'll finish there, Chair. But at the same, I am concerned that this is where our policies lead us, and I think that is something a broader issue that this council needs to look at.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Barnard, did you want to?
Thank you, Chair. I don't actually agree with you, Councillor Smith, in this regard, because
Councillor Smith, could you switch off your?
Sorry. Because I think you know, in all of these things, and I remember this from a number of years on the planning committee, that there is a degree of subjectivity at the margins on this. I remember planning officers saying this before, and I remember other applications as well in contentious sites with better access, where we were told that everything would stack up, and then in appeal, and I'm not going to mention them because we don't bring other sites in there, but I think we need to think this carefully. Can I first of all, though, in my little interjection here, first of all thank the officers for answering all the questions that were raised at the previous meeting. I think there's been a huge amount of work that's gone into them, and I think that answers have been provided to all the questions to that. And I think it's actually highlighted, as has actually been said already, the complexity of this. We basically spent over an hour considering how to access a site for 50 houses. And I'm not going to talk about the 50 houses because that's completely different. And that tells you in its own regard just how difficult it is to come up with anything that's remotely acceptable in the eyes of some to access this site. And my big concern with all of this is the lived experience of the current residents and the future residents, and how a planning decision we take tonight, and how all the hypothetical things, which unfortunately we know will become a reality over the next number of years, will impact on how this will actually work in practice. And I don't for one moment fault anything that I've heard in terms of the officers arguing this and this, but at the end of the day, will this work or won't it? And my concern is this: effectively what we're trying to do is to access 50 houses through a very wide gate with 2 trees either side, a protected oak tree, and we're relying on, over the next 50 to 100 years, management company agreements, so we know how variable they can be, to actually ensure that this is protected and supported. You know, having the manpower present to ensure that when any work is done, that it's reinstated effectively and properly before damage is impacted. And that's putting a huge strain on this. But ultimately, we have an application where we're not going to have a dual access to it for 50 houses. We're going to have an access that relies on a lot of technology where there's nothing stopping a van, a car, a lorry or anything on repeated basis going onto the pavement because there's nothing there to stop it happening. And you know, I absolutely get Councillor Smith coming from on this, but I think the fact that we spent so long and we're still having questions where there's a question of judgment at this point means I just cannot support the access to site in this thing, because I think we are storing up huge problems in the long run on this site that only time will tell. And that's the problem we've got, haven't we? Yes, maybe it's a failure in policy to some extent, but actually I think there are sufficient grounds here to say, no, this isn't good enough for the long-term sustainability of this site. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more speakers?
Yes, I'm
Councillor-
Yes, through you.
Councillor Hill.
Most of my colleagues have brought up what I was saying earlier about a difference between what a plan is, and then to go to a section 73 after to attain what I feel is going to be a problem, because from what was a double track under an appeal, yes, but here we are now narrowizing something that we're not. And I really, in my heart, have concerns because I am dealing with an application, a housing similar to this in the area where this has occurred, where the road does not belong or cannot be shown to be in the ownerships of the applicants and that. And it puts me in worry that we're not being shown honest paperwork, not through the officers, but I do have reservations because of certain cases. A case I'm dealing with at the moment, and it is similar to this, where it goes from a planning application to a section 73, and this is like rubber stamping some of it, and I'm concerned about the detailing. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Further.
Okay, should we go to the
I think I will sum up if I can. We've heard from the officers the answers to all of the questions that were put, and we know that CellWeb will last 40 years. And it is to be strong enough to take occasional use of a heavy vehicle if necessary. We don't have any grounds that I can see to refuse this, apart from the hypothetical that may or may not happen. And I think we have to follow the officers' recommendations, because they will have considered those hypothetical occurrences. And we have to rely on them for having researched this at length, repeatedly, over the last few months. Well, years, I suppose it's been going. We are reassured on the effect on the trees. We are reassured on the drainage through the road surface. We can't go on the appeal decision of a two-track road. This is entirely new proposal, and we have to take it as seen, not refer back to the original that was accepted. I'm not sure about the non-sustainable development, because although, you know, we do have to look at that. We can incorporate things in the 50 houses. We do have to build these houses somewhere. I'm really not very happy that they're being built there, but that has been accepted. We can't change that. We have to bear in mind that that has been accepted. What we're looking at is the access road, and we have not been given any doubt that the access road will serve its purpose. So I'm not sure that how you can possibly, unfortunately, I have to say, I'm not happy entirely with it, but we have to go with what we are recommended, because the officers have the facts and others have checked things out. There is a 40-year life on this cell web stuff, and it is unlikely, very unlikely, that the road will break down, that the sewer will break, although there are answers to each of those things. Emergency access will be sustained. We've had cable dug into the road all over the borough recently, and there is no access whilst they're doing that in some places, and you have to find other ways round. I know there is no other way round here, but there is the way, the means to get emergency access, and clearly one-way traffic with traffic controls when there's pedestrians involved as well is doable, and we can't lose sight of that fact. We simply have to go on this, otherwise we're liable to be I don't see how an inspector on appeal will be able to say that it's not doable, basically. So we must go to the vote, and we must ask you each in turn what your vote will be, but please bear in mind that this is a legal process. We have to follow rules. Unfortunately, it's not an emotional thing. We just have to do what is practical and doable in the face of an accepted application that needs a new access, and that's what we have. We do have the possibility to move the pedestrian crossing, which I think is very important for other reasons. So I think time to go to the vote.
Okay, do you want me to go through
Yes,
in
please.
turn?
Thanks, Emma.
Councillor Barnard, Dr. Barnard?
Against.
Yep. Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Collins?
For.
Councillor Egglestone?
Regrettably for.
Councillor Frewer?
Councillor Frewer has given.
Oh, is he not here? Sorry.
Hi, I'm online. I can't vote, can I?
No, sorry. Councillor Hayes?
Against.
Councillor Karim?
Regrettably for.
Councillor Mackenzie Bile?
Against.
Councillor Regan, sorry. Oh, sorry. Councillor Penfold?
Regrettably for.
And then Councillor Smith.
Could you switch off your microphone, please?
So that's for.
Smith and
So, Councillor Smith?
No, Councillor.
Councillor Smith was 4. I think you've missed Councillor Zahuruddin.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Sheridan. Sorry, I can't pronounce it very well.
That's all right. It's against.
Oh, no, against. Is Councillor Smith here?
Yeah.
Okay. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3. 6, 4. Yeah, it's 6-4 for the application.
Thank you. Thank you. As several of us have said, regrettably, 4, and I'm afraid there is little we could do. Okay, I think that's the last item on the agenda, so the meeting is now closed. Thank you. We'd better wait for the live stream to switch